Welcome to our deep dive into this really fascinating world where AI meets coding.
Yeah.
We're looking at how these AI tools are going to like totally reshape the future of programming. And you sent over this really cool interview with the team behind Cursor, which is this AI-powered code editor built on VS Code.
Yeah, it's built on VS Code.
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, they're doing some really, really interesting things right at the cutting edge of
Exactly.
how AI is changing software development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kind of kick things off, can you give us like just a quick overview of what is Cursor? What makes it stand out, from the code editors that we're all used to using?
So think about it this way. A traditional code editor is like a really, really fancy typewriter for code.
Okay.
It'll like highlight your syntax for you. It'll help you kind of find your way around your project,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still mainly just a tool for you to like manually type out all your code.
Okay.
Cursor, on the other hand, tries to be more like a coding partner. It uses AI to try to predict what you're going to code next.
Mm.
And in some cases, even suggest entire blocks of code for you.
So it's like reading your mind as you're going?
In a way, yeah, like it's trying to understand your intent.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn how that works.
Hmm.
The interview mentions that the team has this background with Vim, and then the rise of GitHub Copilot kind of got them interested in VS Code.
Right.
Do you think that shift was important for them to like get to where they are now with Cursor?
Oh, absolutely. Um, Vim is incredibly powerful, but it's known for being very keyboard centric
Right.
and having kind of a steep learning curve. VS Code, on the other hand, is a lot more visual
Yeah.
and user-friendly, and that makes it a better platform for integrating AI features that, need to interact with the code in a
Yeah.
more intuitive way.
Okay.
I think they were clearly inspired by like the possibilities of AI-assisted coding that Copilot showed
Yeah.
when that came out.
Yeah, so in the interview, they talk about this idea of scaling loss and how that made them really optimistic about AI's potential in programming. What is scaling loss and why was it such a big deal for them?
So scaling loss is this idea that like as you make your AI models bigger and bigger and you give them more and more data,
Right.
their performance on certain tasks starts to plateau.
Okay.
And for a while, people thought this might limit how much AI could actually contribute
Yeah.
to really complex tasks like programming.
Right.
But then newer models like GPT-4 came along and kind of shattered those expectations,
Yeah.
showing that scaling could lead to significant breakthroughs.
Mm.
And this really fueled the Cursor team's belief that AI could be used to build tools that could really fundamentally change how we code.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like what they saw the potential of AI kind of exploding right in front of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the specifics of Cursor.
Yeah.
This tab feature sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
What is that, and how does it help eliminate these low entropy actions that they keep talking about?
So tab, as they call it, is this feature that's designed to be like a shortcut for all those little repetitive things you do while you're coding that don't actually require that much thought.
Yeah.
Like navigating to the next logical place to edit your code,
Yeah.
or adding a closing bracket after you type an opening one.
Right. Right. Right.
Cursor uses AI to try to predict all these actions and lets you perform them
Oh.
just by hitting the tab key.
So it's like automating all the boring parts of coding, so I can focus on the cool stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Brilliant. But I'm curious about like the technical side of things.
Sure.
They mentioned some really complex concepts like sparse models and speculative decoding.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for us a little bit?
Yeah, so sparse models, specifically this type called mixture of experts or MOE, are kind of like having a team of specialized AI agents
Okay.
that are all working together.
Mhm.
And each agent is really good at understanding a specific part of the code.
Okay.
And then they collaborate to kind of make sense of the whole thing.
Okay.
And this is really important for handling these like really big code bases.
So it's like having a team of code whisperers.
Right.
Each one specializing in their own little area.
Exactly.
Very cool.
And then there's this thing called speculative decoding,
Okay.
which is all about speed.
Okay.
As you're typing, the AI is constantly predicting what you're going to type next
Oh, wow.
and preparing those code suggestions in advance.
Oh, okay.
This makes the whole experience feel super smooth and responsive, even when you're working with really complex code.
Wow. So it's like the AI is always like one step ahead,
Right.
always anticipating your next move.
Yeah.
That's awesome. They also talk about aggressive caching as a way to make Cursor even faster.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means?
So caching is basically a way for the AI to store information it's already processed.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to do the same work over and over again.
Okay.
Think of it like a saving your favorite website to your bookmarks,
Right.
so you don't have to type in the whole address every
All
time.
right.
Cursor uses this really aggressive caching strategy, meaning it remembers as much as possible to avoid like doing any unnecessary computation.
That's super clever. It's like they've optimized the AI for speed in like every way imaginable.
Right.
Um, but they also stress the importance of crafting the right prompt, which is essentially the instructions that you give the AI.
Yes.
They even built a system called Preempt for this. What makes prompt engineering so important, and what's so special about their approach?
So prompt engineering is all about communicating your intent to the AI as clearly as possible.
Okay.
It's like giving someone directions.
Right.
If you're vague or ambiguous,
Oh,
they might end up getting lost.
yeah.
With Preempt, they've actually taken a page from web development,
Hmm.
and they're using a format similar to JSX to actually structure their prompts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This makes the prompts more organized and easier for the AI to understand, which leads to much better code suggestions.
Oh, so they're like borrowing concepts from one area of tech and applying it to another.
Exactly.
It's like they're creating this whole new language for talking to AI about code.
Yeah, in a way.
Very cool. But what about the practical side of all this? Like, does Cursor actually make coding easier and faster in the real world?
Well, that's where things get even more
Yes.
interesting.
Mm.
They've really put a lot of effort into making sure that Cursor feels really intuitive and natural to use.
Mm.
They've even designed a special diff interface
Okay.
that helps you see exactly how the AI's suggestions are going to change your code before you actually accept them.
So they're not just like throwing AI at the problem and saying like, here you go.
Right.
They're actually thinking about the user experience and making it as seamless as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to this other really important point that they make in the interview.
Right.
Which is like the challenge of actually evaluating how well these AI models are performing
Yes.
in the real world of
Mhm.
coding, because the traditional benchmarks often don't capture like the nuance of
Yeah.
what makes a code suggestion actually truly useful. Like, it's one thing for an AI to generate like syntactically correct code, but it's another thing entirely for it to generate code that's elegant, that's efficient.
Right.
And that actually solves the problem that you're working on.
Right.
So how does the Cursor team deal with that challenge?
They prioritize real-world feedback from developers.
Okay.
Traditional benchmarks tend to focus on these very specific tasks.
Yeah.
Like predicting the next token in a sequence of code.
Right.
But real-world coding is so much more dynamic and nuanced than that.
Yeah.
You're constantly switching between different tasks.
Mhm.
You're dealing with requirements that are always changing.
Right.
You're communicating with other humans
Yeah.
who might not always be perfectly clear about what they want.
It's like trying to judge a fish's ability to swim by only looking at how fast it flaps its fins in a
Yeah.
tank.
Yeah, you're missing
Yeah.
this whole picture of how it navigates a complex and constantly changing environment.
Yeah, and that's where those vibe checks come in that they talk about.
Yeah, it gives them a way to assess how well the AI is adapting to this really messy reality of software development.
Yeah.
They're looking for things like, does the AI understand the programmer's intent even when the prompt isn't perfectly clear?
Right.
Are the suggestions actually helpful and relevant to the task at hand?
Yeah.
Does the AI help the programmer feel more productive and creative?
Right.
These are like the key things.
It's almost like they're treating the AI like an apprentice,
Mhm.
and they're seeing how well it's learning and adapting
Yeah.
to this craft of programming.
Yeah.
Speaking of apprentices, the interview also gets into this potential of AI agents in coding.
Right.
What's their take on that?
They're definitely really excited about the possibilities.
Yes.
But they're also grounded in the current limitations.
Okay.
They see agents as having the potential to automate really specific, well-defined tasks,
Okay.
like automatically fixing a certain bug,
Yeah.
generating some boilerplate code, or even migrating a code base to a whole new framework.
Yeah. I remember that time when I was really struggling with the YouTube API,
Mm.
and Cursor generated like the perfect code snippet for me in like seconds.
Yeah.
It felt like magic.
It can feel really magical.
But you're right, they do make a clear distinction between those kinds of tasks and the more like open-ended creative aspects of software development.
Absolutely.
Right.
They emphasize that for complex tasks that require a lot of human judgment and intuition and creativity,
Yeah.
it's still really crucial to have the programmer in the driver's seat making the key decisions and guiding the overall direction of the project.
Oh.
They envision AI agents as more like these powerful assistants.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to augment the programmer's abilities, not replace them entirely.
So it's less about AI like taking over and more about AI becoming a collaborative partner
Right.
and helping us tackle these tedious and repetitive tasks so we can focus on the more challenging and rewarding parts of coding.
Exactly.
And this kind of brings us back to this theme of speed
Yeah.
that they keep emphasizing. Like, how does Cursor manage to be so fast and responsive,
Right.
especially when dealing with these complex AI models and these massive code bases?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of really clever techniques.
Okay.
We've already talked about some of them, like sparse models,
Yeah,
speculative decoding, and aggressive caching.
right.
But they also go into detail about how they've optimized the infrastructure that actually runs cursors.
Okay.
They talk about things like efficient attention mechanisms,
Right.
which help the AI focus on the most relevant parts of the code,
Okay.
and a technique called cache warming,
Okay.
where they preload the AI's memory with information it's likely to need.
So it's like they've fine-tuned every single aspect of the system from the AI models to the underlying infrastructure
Yeah.
to just like squeeze out every bit of performance they can.
Exactly.
Really impressive. They also mentioned some of the challenges that they faced scaling the platform on AWS
Yes.
to handle a growing user base and these demands of these massive code bases. Right.
How did they overcome those hurdles?
One of the key innovations that they highlight is this concept of a shadow workspace.
Okay.
So imagine like a virtual copy of your entire coding environment running in the background,
Okay.
where the AI can do these complex computations and analyses
Ooh, wow.
without interrupting your workflow.
So while I'm busy typing away in my main workspace,
Right.
the AI is like diligently working behind the scenes
Yeah.
in this shadow workspace,
Yeah.
preparing suggestions, running tests,
Mhm.
and anticipating my next move. That's a fantastic analogy.
And it gets even more interesting when you dive into the technical details. They talk about using techniques like mirroring the file system in memory
Wow.
and leveraging language servers to provide real-time feedback to the AI models.
Okay.
It's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
But the key takeaway is that they've found a way to make the AI work for you proactively
Right.
without getting in your way.
So it's like having this tireless assistant
Yeah.
working alongside you.
Constantly analyzing your code, offering helpful suggestions, but never stepping on your toes
Right.
or interrupting your flow. And speaking of flow, they also talk about how AI could change the way we conceptualize and interact with code itself,
Yes.
moving beyond traditional programming languages to something more intuitive and expressive.
This is where things start to get really futuristic.
Yeah.
You know, they imagine a world where we can build software by expressing our ideas in a more natural, human-centric way,
Wow.
maybe even visually.
Okay.
So instead of writing lines of code, we might be able to drag and drop components, sculpt logic with gestures,
Yeah.
or even just describe what we want the software to do in plain English.
It's like the difference between sketching an idea on a napkin
Exactly.
and having to draw a detailed blueprint with precise measurements and annotations.
Yeah, the sketch captures the essence of the idea really quickly and intuitively.
Right.
And the blueprint requires a lot more technical precision, and they believe that AI could be this key to bridging that gap, allowing us to express our software ideas in a way that's closer to how we think and communicate as humans.
Wow.
They even talk about the potential for AI to help us break free from these constraints of formal programming languages and move toward a more fluid and adaptable way of building software.
That's a fascinating vision, but it also raises some important questions.
Right.
Like if we're moving towards a world where we can express software ideas more intuitively, does that mean we won't need to learn how to code in the traditional sense anymore?
Right.
What does this mean for the future of programming education
Yeah.
and the skills that will be in demand?
These are great questions.
Yeah.
And they kind of lead us into this broader discussion about the evolving role of the programmer
Right.
in this AI-driven world.
Yeah.
But before we explore those implications,
Okay.
I think it would be good to take a moment to kind of reflect on the technical challenges and innovations behind Cursor's approach to AI-assisted coding.
Yeah.
Because they go into some really fascinating details
Oh, yeah.
about how they're handling these massive amounts of data and choosing the right AI models for these specific tasks.
Let's do it. Let's delve into the nuts and bolts of how they're building this groundbreaking technology.
Okay, so we're talking about how the Cursor team really values getting feedback from actual developers
Yeah.
using their tool.
Hmm.
It's one thing for the AI to create code that's technically correct, but it's a whole other thing to make sure that code is elegant and efficient and actually solves the problem.
Right. It has to work in the real world.
Exactly. And traditional benchmarks, they just don't capture that.
Yeah, they're too focused on like narrow tasks.
Right. Like predicting the next token in a sequence.
Right.
But real coding is so much more dynamic. You're
Mhm.
always jumping between different tasks. The requirements are constantly changing. You have to communicate with other people who might not even know exactly what they want.
It's like you said before, trying to judge a fish based on how fast it flaps its fins in a tank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're missing the whole picture of how it navigates in the real ocean.
Yeah, those vibe checks, they do seem like a much better way to figure out if the AI is actually helpful.
Definitely. And that's what they're looking for. Does the AI actually get what the programmer wants, even if the prompt isn't perfect?
Hmm.
Are the suggestions useful and relevant to the actual task? And does the AI actually help the programmer be more productive and creative?
It sounds like they're really trying to make the AI a partner in the coding process.
Right. More like a really skilled apprentice is always learning.
Which brings us to AI agents. The interview talked a bit about those. What's their take on how those could fit into coding?
Well, they're excited about the potential, but they're realistic about the limitations right now.
Okay.
They see agents as being good at automating very specific things. Like, you've got a bug. Can the AI automatically fix it? Can it generate some basic code? Or even move a whole code base to a new framework?
Yeah, I've had Cursor do that for me with an API. It felt like magic.
Yeah, it can be amazing.
Yeah.
But like you said, they know there's a difference between those tasks and the really open-ended creative stuff that programmers do. For the complex stuff where you need human judgment and intuition and creativity,
Mm.
the programmer still has to be the one making the big decisions and setting the direction.
So the AI is more like a super powerful assistant.
Right. It's there to help us do the boring stuff so we can focus on the interesting stuff.
And that ties back into speed, which they keep coming back to. How does Cursor manage to be so fast, even with these big AI models and huge code bases?
They've got a whole bunch of clever techniques. We talked about sparse models, speculative decoding, and aggressive caching.
Right.
But they've also optimized how Cursor actually runs on their servers.
Okay.
Things like efficient attention mechanisms, which help the AI focus on the important parts of the code, and cache warming, where they preload the AI's memory with what it's probably going to need.
So it's like they've squeezed every ounce of speed out of the system.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And they've had to overcome some serious scaling challenges on AWS with more and more users and bigger code bases.
How do they manage that?
One of the coolest things is this shadow workspace idea. Imagine a copy of your whole coding environment running in the background.
Wow.
So the AI can do all this heavy lifting without bothering you.
So like while I'm typing away, the AI is working in this shadow world, preparing suggestions and testing things and getting ready for my next move.
Exactly. And they do some really complicated stuff to make that happen.
Okay.
Like mirroring the file system in memory and using language servers to give real-time feedback to the AI. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so the AI is almost like this invisible partner working tirelessly behind the scenes.
Right. It's like having a coding buddy who never gets tired.
And they also talk about how AI could change how we think about code altogether. Like maybe we won't even need traditional programming languages anymore.
Yeah, they really go there.
Okay.
They imagine building software in a much more natural human way, maybe even visually.
Wow.
So instead of writing lines of code, you could drag and drop stuff or use gestures or even just tell the AI what you want in plain English.
That sounds almost like science fiction.
It does, but that's what they're aiming for. To build software in a way that's more like how our brains actually work.
It's like the difference between sketching something on a napkin and making a super detailed blueprint.
Right. The sketch gets the idea across quickly and easily, and the blueprint is much more technical and rigid.
Yeah, and they think AI can help us bridge that gap.
Exactly.
But that brings up some big questions like, will people even need to learn to code in the traditional way?
Yeah.
What does that mean for education and the skills people will need in the future?
Those are great questions that get to the heart of how AI is changing the role of programmers. But before we go there, I think it's worth digging into some of the technical details of how Cursor's actually built. They talk about handling massive amounts of data and picking the right AI models for the job. Do you want to dive into that?
Absolutely. Let's get technical. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how AI might even change how we think about code itself. Like maybe we won't even need traditional programming languages.
Right.
Oh.
They're thinking really big.
Yeah. But for now, they're still dealing with the challenges of making something like Cursor actually work. And they talked about how they're handling all that data and making sure they're using the right AI models.
Yeah, one of the things they highlighted is how to index these massive code bases.
Mm.
Think about it. You're searching through millions of lines of code to find one specific thing.
Oh man, that sounds like a nightmare.
It would take forever. So they came up with this system using hashes,
Okay.
which are like unique fingerprints for every piece of code.
Okay.
So instead of storing every single line, they store these hashes. And they've got a really clever way of organizing them so they can find exactly what you need super fast.
It's like having a map that tells you exactly where to find the needle in the haystack.
Exactly. No more searching randomly.
And they also talked about picking the right AI model for the job. Like, sometimes a smaller, more specialized tool is better than this big general purpose one.
Right. It's like if you need a hammer and a nail, you wouldn't use a sledgehammer.
Makes sense. You want the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And they're doing the same thing with their AI models. They're training specific models for certain tasks, like generating code or finding bugs.
So they're not just throwing the biggest AI at every problem.
No, they're being smart about it. And that also applies to how they think about the ethical side of AI-assisted coding.
Yeah, they did talk about that. What were some of their concerns?
Well, they're aware of the risks of relying too much on AI.
Yep.
And they know it's important for humans to stay in control.
Yeah.
And they want to be transparent about how their system works,
Okay.
so people understand what's going on.
They also talk about data privacy, right? Like, if the AI is always looking at our code, what's to stop it from collecting sensitive information?
Absolutely. That's a huge concern.
Hmm.
And they're looking at ways to protect user privacy.
Okay.
Things like homomorphic encryption, where the AI can process the code without actually seeing the data itself.
That sounds super high tech.
It is. But it shows they're serious about keeping things secure.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to build a responsible future for this technology.
I think so. They're passionate about giving programmers better tools, but they want to do it the right way.
It's really inspiring to see a team that's pushing the boundaries, but also thinking about the bigger picture.
I agree. They've got a vision for how AI can make coding faster, smarter, more creative.
Yeah, it's not about replacing humans, it's about helping us do more.
Exactly.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of AI-assisted coding.
It really has.
This team is doing amazing work with Cursor,
They're definitely leading the way.
and it makes you wonder what's next. Like, what if we could build software as fast as we can think,
Right.
with the precision of a machine but the creativity of an artist?
The possibilities are endless.
What incredible things could we create? What problems could we solve?
Deciding to think about.
The future of coding is right here in front of us.
And it's up to us to shape it.
That's it for our deep dive into the world of AI-assisted coding. We hope you've enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with code.